Welcome to Module 1. In this chapter, we are introduced to a lot of financial terms. Some of these may be very familiar to you, and then others maybe not so much. Although I love this textbook, it really can scare off some students by this first chapter. So if you're having trouble with this chapter, trust that this is a very mathematically based financial chapter. Just flip ahead and glance at some of the other chapters and see that this really is an anomaly. If you're having trouble with some of these concepts, hang in there because you're probably not alone. The concept that gives most students pause is the present value and future value of money. Although this is a bit technical, it is very important that you understand this concept. The value of money, both now and in the future, impacts every financial decision we make, whether it's an investment, a credit card, a car loan, a home loan, even money sitting underneath your mattress. The future value of money deserves your understanding. I'd like you to have your textbook handy, your calculator, a pencil, and some paper to work with before continuing this lecture. Please place this video on pause and collect these items before resuming. Okay, so let's make sure we're on the same page with these definitions first. Present value is the amount that you have right now. Future value is the amount that you have right now after it grows when compounded at a given rate. So here's an example. Let's say you receive $100 for your birthday. Instead of spending it on a great night out, you decide it would be wise to deposit it into your savings account. Let's pretend that the interest rate for your savings account is 10%. Now I know that this is nowhere close to the current rates for savings accounts, but it will help make the number clean and neat for this example. You decide to leave that $100 in your account for 2 years. So in this example, our present value is going to be $100. Our interest is 10%, and our duration is 2 years. What is the future value of this deposit? Take a few minutes to pause this video and quickly do the calculation. Your answer should have been $121. Our future value of this deposit is $121. The first year, your $100 would make $10 in interest. You would then have $110. The second year, your $110 would make $11 in interest. You will now have earned a total of $21 in interest. Therefore, your future value is $121. How did your answer compare? If your answer was $120, then you forgot the very important tool of compound interest. Every period, whether it's yearly, as in our example, quarterly, or even daily, your interest compounds. Your present value of money has a potential to grow quite quickly. In our birthday money example, it's easy to calculate year 1 and then year 2 separately and then add them together to determine our future value. But what if our interest was compounded monthly for 2 years? Well, again, we'll never find a bank who would offer 10% interest compounded monthly for 2 years. Let's calculate it just for practice. We'll need to use this equation. This equation is described on page 12 to 13 in your textbook. FV still stands for your future value. PV is your present value. I is your interest rate per period, and N is the number of compounding periods. So in our example, our present value is going to be $100. Our interest is 10%. And if we're looking at 2 years of monthly compounding periods, we're looking at 24 periods. 2 years times 12 months is 24 periods, 24 months. So N is 24. Something to keep in mind when we're using this equation is that the periods of I and N, they really need to be the same. So if we're talking about the annual interest of an investment, then the number of compounding periods must be expressed annually. If we're talking about daily interest, then the compounding periods must be expressed daily. So 1 year would be expressed as 365. You've probably noticed this on credit card statements. The interest is usually expressed annually at maybe 13%, but you aren't paying 13% interest on your balance each month. Instead, it's calculated on a typical 30-day period. So back to our sample problem. Our $100 is compounded for 24 periods at 10% interest. What will our future value be in 2 years? Our equation would look like this. Our future value is equal to $100, 1 plus 0.10, which is our 10%, to the power of 24. You'd have your future value of 100 times 9.85, and your future value then would be $984.97. Your answer will vary a little bit based on decimal points. Wouldn't that be nice? $984.97 off of a $100 investment. Unrealistic, but nice all the same. So let's pick a more practical example. I'd like you to take a moment to find page 25 in your textbook. Go ahead and place this lecture on pause to locate that page. Question number 4 reads, Ben Collins plans to buy a house for $180,000. If the real estate in his area is expected to increase in value by 2% each year, what will its approximate value be in 7 years from now? Please place this lecture on pause and calculate that answer. The answer is $206,820. His house would increase in value by $26,820 over 7 years. How does this compare with your answer? Here's how I worked the problem. Future value equals the present value of $180,000 times 1 plus 0.02, that's our 2% interest, to the power of 7. So you should have had future value equals 180,000 times 1.149. So your future value equals 206,820. Now, your answer might have varied a little bit. If your calculator only extended to 2 decimal points, for example, you would have calculated 180,000 times 1.15, and you would have ended up with an answer of 207,000. If you can change your calculator to extend to 3 decimal points, your answer will be more aligned with the answers I'm expecting on the test and in your homework, but either are accepted. This equation, like all equations, can be worked well in reverse. So let's say I will give you $1,000 in 5 years. How much money would you give me now to make it fair to me? I'm assuming a 6% interest for our example. So I'm going to give you $1,000 in 5 years. How much are you going to give me now to make it fair to everybody? And this equation, it'll look a little bit like this. This time our future value is filled in with $1,000. Our present value is what we're trying to calculate. So this is kind of back when we were doing high school algebra and you're trying to solve for the value of n. Our present value times 1 plus 0.06. That 0.06 represents our 6% interest to the power of 5, 5 being 5 years. We're going to go ahead and solve for the present value, and you will end up with $747.38. This means that you would need to give me $747.38 now, and then I would return it $1,000 to you in 5 years. That's based on 6%. So if we want to look at it from another way, you could say if I'm going to invest $747 now at 6% interest, in 5 years it will equal $1,000. This should clear up some of the time value money concepts, at least from a calculation point of view. But if you have any questions on these, just shoot me an email. Another concept that was mentioned in this chapter that I'd like you to give some thought to is the commingling of finances. On page 22, your textbook describes some scenarios that work for couples. Have you given this some thought? Because it's important to do so. Statistics show that couples fight most over financial matters. So it's essential that you not only protect yourself and your credit by having full disclosure of your partner's finances and credit score, but you should also have a game plan for how you'll keep track of income and expenses. One strategy that works well for a lot of couples is to open a joint account when they are engaged, and this allows them to contribute money for wedding and future household expenses and start negotiating their communication for financial issues. For some couples, especially those with similar incomes and lifestyles, this might move very smoothly. But other couples need some time to establish boundaries. It can be extremely uncomfortable to talk about money, income, and debt, but a healthy relationship with your future spouse is dependent on both honesty and a mutual respect for values. So take a few minutes this week and reflect upon your own finances and what you bring to a partnership both in debt and in assets. What would make you feel most comfortable in a marriage when it comes to money? Would you want joint accounts? Some separate accounts? How are you going to handle credit cards, car loans, and utilities? There's really no right answer to this because every family functions uniquely, but you really should give it some consideration. This officially ends the lecture for Module 1. Please refer to your Module 1 checklist to ensure that you're meeting all the course requirements for this module. You'll also notice you have PowerPoints in this module provided by the publisher. Some students find these very valuable and other students prefer to focus their time on the textbook. Please at least skim the PowerPoints as a study aid, but you don't have to spend significant time on them if they're not of value to you. All work for this module, including homework and discussions, is due Wednesday by 11:45 p.m. It is also essential that you complete the attendance verification assignment. It's often referred to as the 10% quiz. If you don't complete this on time, I am required to drop you from the class, so please do that next if you haven't done it already. Have a great week, and please email me with any questions. Thank you.